A shed stick is one of my favorite tools for weaving on small tapestry looms. In this video, I'd like to show you how I use them and where you might find one yourself. So why would we use a shed stick when we're weaving tapestry on small looms? Usually it's a loom that doesn't have a shedding device, and we're using this little pointy stick to pick up the warps that we're going to put the weft under next. Basically, we're using the shed stick like a simple shedding device. So why can't I just use a simple yarn needle? You totally can. It's just that if we're using a needle and no other device to hold the warps open a little bit, the weft gets dragged against all of those warps, under, over, and pretty soon it's going to abrade your weft. It's going to make it fray and be really fuzzy. So if you want to keep your weft from getting fuzzy like that, it's helpful to have something to hold the shed open just a little bit. Needles are totally useful for putting the weft into the shed, especially if you're weaving small things and you don't need a very long length of weft. But I do like to use a shed stick or some similar tool to open that shed just a little bit first. My favorite shed stick is this one, which was made by Hockett. I like it because the size is just right for my small looms. It's only about 1/2 inch wide and about 1/4 inch deep, and it's only about 7 inches long, so it's fairly short. It works well if we're looking at small looms. It fits well for this size loom. This is another Hockett shed stick in a different wood. This one I really like is made out of holly. It's a really hard wood, so it means that the stick is super smooth and there's not a lot of drag on it. Unfortunately for all of us, Hockett retired a few years ago, and these shed sticks are no longer available. So where can we get a similar tool? A shed stick is actually a fairly sophisticated tool. It has to slide through the warp easily, so it has to have a fairly good point on it. If it doesn't have a good point, it's hard to pick up the warps, especially at closer sets. This is an 8 EPI set on this loom, and this shed stick works fine for that. So making a shed stick like this that's the right size, fairly small for small looms, and that has a really nice point on it means a lot of hand processing. Hand processing is expensive, and most makers find that it isn't worth the time to make something that's going to be called a stick. In other words, they can't charge enough for something that's sold as a stick. I think it's worth paying quite a lot of money for a good shed stick, as it's the tool that you're going to use the most after your tapestry fork. But I have yet to convince a tool maker that this is so. I would rather pay $30 for a really good tool that I'm going to use all the time than to pay $8 for one that doesn't work very well. Let's look at some of the shed sticks or substitutes that you can purchase today in 2022. I really only have 2 really solid solutions for you right now, but some of these other options might work. The first is the Shacht weaving stick. This is sold by Shacht Spindle Company, and it's called a weaving stick. It's about 9 inches long. They also have an 11-inch one. The 9-inch one is the one I suggest for small looms. This particular shed stick is 5/8 inch wide, so it's a little bit wider than the Hockett stick that I really like. About the same depth, which is good. And this particular shed stick has a really nice point on it, which is excellent for tapestry weaving. So it does a really good job of picking up each of the warps because the point is so nice and pointy. It also is narrow enough you can turn it sideways and put something through your shed for a while anyway. Remember that when I'm weaving on this loom, as I'm weaving up here, it's going to be probably impossible to turn this sideways because there's just not enough play in the warp. However, at first, on a short loom like this Mirrox Saffron, this shed stick could be turned sideways. So that is the Shacht weaving stick. Shacht sells a lot of battens and other things for tapestry, but this one they're calling a weaving stick. It even has a hole on the end. I suppose if you wanted to put your weft yarn through it, you could use it like a needle. The second option that I know is for sale right now is this shed stick by Yarn Worker. Yarn Worker is run by Liz Gibson. It is a rigid heddle weaving company. This is a new tool for her, and it is almost identical in size to that Hockett stick that I like so much. It's 1/2 inch wide, it's about 1/4 inch deep, and it has a nice tip on it. She calls it a pickup stick on her website, which is yarnworker.com. This particular shed stick works okay. At 8 ends per inch, I'm able to use it to pick up the warps. The point is not quite as pointy as the Shacht stick is. So this stick doesn't really work very well at closer sets. Like I wouldn't choose it if I were going to weave at 12 ends per inch. But it works okay at 8 ends per inch, and it is a really lovely size. I like the 1/2 inch depth. It goes through the shed pretty well. It's not quite as smooth as the Hockett sticks are just because of the wood she's using, but I think it's a really useful tool. So overall, those are the 2 shed sticks that I know you can purchase right now. Shacht is available all over the world from Shacht dealers, the Shacht weaving stick, and this is Yarn Worker's pickup stick. There's some other options that you can use. This is a really beautiful one made by Handywomanshop. She makes a lot of different weaving and fiber tools, handywomanshop.com. And this shed stick is super smooth, so she's doing an amazing job at finishing it. The thing about this shed stick for very small looms is that it's pretty fat, and the tip is just not as pointy as I would like, although it's probably comparable to the Yarn Worker shed stick in terms of how well it goes through the shed. So this is another great option. Often Handywomanshop is on hiatus. She's just a one-woman show. So if you want one of these and she doesn't have her shop open, you might just send her a note that you would like one and she'll put you on her waiting list. There are other options out there. I am waiting for this company to make more of these acrylic shed sticks. Again, they work okay. They're not quite as pointy as what I like, but they are simple. And if they would sell these again, they would be a cheap alternative to the wooden ones. This is by Made Kits, and at the moment their shop is not taking orders, but it's something to watch. I'm hoping this acrylic one will be an option that will be actually quite inexpensive. Another acrylic pickup stick is made by Sketch Looms. This one is pretty crude and doesn't work nearly as well as the one with the rounded tips, although I might ask Sketch Looms if they might be willing to modify their design a little bit. I think you have to get this pickup stick with a loom. So when you purchase a Sketch Loom, I think this comes along with it. Shacht has a 3-in-1 tool, which is what this is, which I've had people ask me, is there a pickup stick that has a beater on the other end? And Shacht makes one, but the problem for small looms is that this is just really, really large. One of the things I like for shed sticks is to be able to turn them on their side, and for a loom that's this small, it's impossible. This is just way too big. But if you're using a larger loom and you need a shed stick or a pickup stick, this might be an option. I think that the beater end of it is fairly crude, but again, if you were using a big pipe loom or something at a fairly wide set, this might be a tool for you. A few other options. This is made by Leclerc. I can't even remember what they call it, but I think that this would be, if you have one of these lying around, this might be a good option for a pickup stick. I don't like that it is slanted, but it, you know, actually even if you didn't turn it on its side, it would probably work fairly well as a shed stick. I think you could use a double-pointed knitting needle. So you can use that just to pick up your shed, and then if you're using a needle to put your weft through, you could, this would work. If you're using a tapestry bobbin or something, this isn't going to be enough room to get that bobbin through. So if I wanted to pass a tapestry bobbin through here, this isn't large enough. Whereas a shed stick, when you turn it sideways, you can get a bobbin through there. Other options, there's lots of people who just make various sticks. This is a beautiful little shed stick that I think came from Weaving Rainbow. I don't know that this particular maker is still out there, but Weaving Rainbow often has some various little shed sticks, so you might be able to find something that would really work for you. Here's another one that came from, I don't remember where this came from. Someone made it and gave it to me. It's a beautiful little shed stick, but I don't know where you would get one. If you go to conferences often, haunt the vendor area, look for woodworkers and see if you can find someone who's made something that looks like this and give it a try. There are lots of wooden needles out there. I think this one was made by Jim Hockett, but lots of other people make wooden needles. Then in a pinch, if you can't find anything else, this is just a popsicle stick. It's actually a kid's craft stick, which you could use for a shed stick. In this case, this one is probably too thick for most short looms, but a regular size popsicle stick would be just about the right size. I'd get a whole pack of them because I'm guessing you probably will break them. I really find that a shed stick is an important tool to manage the warp on small looms, especially that don't have shedding devices. Certainly not all weavers will use them though. Weavers who use high warp looms or looms where the warp is vertical and probably fairly large, pick the warps with one hand, the warps that are in the back shed, and then pass the weft through with their other hand, usually on a tapestry bobbin. Occasionally those weavers also use leashes to help them open those sheds. And of course there are lots of looms that have shedding devices. Those are devices that will open the two sheds that Tapestry uses for you. Those might be opened with treadles on the floor that your feet are operating, or looms like Murex looms or the Shacht Ross Tapestry loom use a rotating bar on the side that has heddles on it that open the sheds for you. But if you're going to weave on very small looms, I really suggest a shed stick. Happy weaving!